This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Hello and welcome to episode 59 of the 1001 Movies podcast, based on the book 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die. This week we'll be talking about Hoop Dreams, the 1994 documentary directed by Steve James.
Well, how does it feel to be finishing? Now, don't say anything you don't mean, William.
I'm serious, because I enjoyed my 4 years. We had run-ins and...
Who had run-ins?
Me and you.
We did?
Yeah, like that time you made me run 75 stairs.
You never forgot that?
Never.
See, you should have been happy and enthusiastic about doing your punishment. But someday you're going to learn that everything that was done was for your benefit, so that you can come back 4 years from now and say, Coach, you were right. Everything that happened at St. Joe's helped me a lot, and as a result, I got a degree. That's what I'm hoping for.
I'm going into communication, so when you start asking for donations, I know the right way to turn you down.
I'm sure you'll never turn us down. I never really felt that he bought into the system. He was never convinced what he was doing was the right thing to do. But overall, he had a good career. Not a great career. He's never goodbye. Could have been different if the injury didn't occur. But it did occur. And that was the big difference. I'm proud of what you did. I just expect you to do a lot better. I don't want this to be the highlight of your career. You got a lot of bigger and better things to do. I'll see you later. Good luck. Well, another one walks out the door, and another one comes in the door. That's what it's all about.
Yo, what up? Yeah, boy, we can go out and kick a little game or something, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I hear you talking, though. Well, come on, boy, it's automatic. It's automatic every time. Check it out. Early in the morning, I rise. I'm up, time to hit the courts real hard, you know what up? I'm just a young man with a dream, but the streets continue to test me like a full-court press, G. And I ain't even trying to hit it, though. So I'm gonna make it automatic like a free throw. See, in my neighborhood, the streets are low, but not to me. And I will not let the hood destroy my dreams.
Once upon a time, filmmaker Steve James found himself the only white man at the gym when he noticed the admirable comradeship among the black athletes. The memory simmered for a while until it bloomed into an idea for a short documentary about inner-city kids playing basketball. He pitched it to his friend Frederick Marx, and the two began their collaboration for a short documentary called Hoopin', a film that they thought, if they were lucky, would be aired someday on PBS. Funded by some cash from the National Endowment of the Arts, PBS, and the local PBS station in Minnesota, James and Marx enlisted cameraman Peter Gilbert, who promised to work for free for a year taping the movie on beta. Figuring their little project would just take a few months probably, they tailed high school basketball recruiter Earl Smith, who introduced them to an 8th grader named Arthur Agee. Arthur, who's black and lived among the crime-ridden streets of inner-city Chicago, seemed like a natural on the basketball court. Arthur was recruited by St. Joseph and its prominent basketball coach Gene Pingatore, who had mentored a young Isaiah Thomas. St. Joe's is a predominantly white Catholic high school on Chicago's outskirts, which was an entirely new world for young Arthur. While interviewing Pingatore, he mentioned to the filmmakers in passing another incoming freshman and basketball talent at the school, William Gates, whose background was identical to that of Arthur's. And thus, the makers of Hoop Dreams found their second subject. James and Marx had other potential subjects, all of which declined to be filmed, but from the start of taping until the end, Arthur and William were the film's sole subjects. The filmmakers gracefully inserted themselves in the homes of the boys' families, and it didn't take long for them to realize that what they were taping wasn't worthy of just a short PBS documentary. The decision was made to follow Arthur and William through their high school basketball careers and possibly all the way to college. and so Hoop Dreams was made. As filming progressed and demo reels were shown to possible financiers, more money began pouring in, and Peter Gilbert found himself working beyond the initial year that he promised. The lives of these boys and their seemingly impossible quest to get to the NBA became the focus of the filmmakers, and they found themselves immersed into the boys' communities. Perhaps because there was a general consensus that the fact some people were making a documentary about Arthur and William cemented their success somehow. At times, the film's welfare seems to teeter disastrously close to failure, like when Arthur's family has to move him from St. Joseph's School to the local public school. Nevertheless, they persevered, and Arthur's story beyond St. Joe's continued to be filmed and turned out to be as equally compelling as William's. The story of how the film affected Hollywood is legendary. Hoop Dreams premiered at 1994's Sundance Film Festival, and the filmmakers may not have been prepared for all of the critical success it had. It won an award at Sundance for Best Documentary, as well as a plethora of other awards across the country. It seemed like nothing could stop Hoop Dreams, and Roger Ebert picked it as his best movie of the year. As the Academy Award nominations neared in early 1995, Ebert and his television partner Gene Siskel lauded the movie once again, perhaps assuming it would be nominated for Best Documentary Feature and wholeheartedly hoping that it would be nominated for the granddaddy of them all, Best Picture. When the nominations were announced, imagine the shock and surprise of all the critics when the only nomination the movie snagged was Best Film Editing. Siskel and Ebert were not discreet in their disgust at the Academy and their television show. Listen in to what they had to say about it.
I talked with two documentary committee members. One gave Hoop Dreams the highest rating possible. The other said he heard that some of his fellow members had trouble with its 3-hour running time. If true, it should be noted that the film editors nominated Hoop Dreams for best editing of any movie all year, so it wasn't too long for editors, which may be the ultimate compliment, if you think about it, for a 3-hour movie. The best thing to come out of this snubbing is that the media is going to spend more time now promoting Hoop Dreams, which opened wider last week. It's now in more than 250 theaters across the country. You take a look. You'll be glad you did.
You know, Gene, I was talking to Barbara Koppel, who won 2 Academy Awards for her
documentary filmmaker.
And she said this committee is in love with talking heads and stock footage, and that's exactly what they are. These old-fashioned, television-oriented films with battleships bombing the beaches at Normandy while some deep voice says how many troops went ashore. They are not interested in living, breathing documentaries. And there's another problem, and that is the committee that picks these documentaries is volunteers, mostly retired people, not most of them documentarians at all. But they have 4 hours free 2 nights a week for 11 weeks to see 64 documentaries, almost 100 hours of documentaries. And so they go night after night, and they get to know each other, and they chat, and they arrive, and they leave. And until this year, they had a chairman. This year, the woman who was the chairman stepped aside for a year because she had a film that was in the running. Now, what do you know? They nominated it. It's the Stockholm Syndrome. They're so friendly that, of course, they wanted to do her a favor. And every year, if you go back year after year and look at the nominees, you'll find 1 or 2 nominees that are fishy because the people that manipulate the committee are trying to get their pictures nominated. This situation stinks. It's rotten. And until the Academy reforms it, they have shame on their name.
But, Roger, let me just throw some of their objections back, because I know that they're going to be listening and taking notes on everything you said. Number one, they're going to say that every branch gets to vote for its own work.
Yeah, but this branch doesn't. The documentarians don't have a documentary branch.
Okay. The next thing they're going to say is you, Roger, and you, Gene, have not seen the 64 films that we voted on.
I've seen one of them that they nominated, and nobody smart enough to tie his shoes would feel that that film was better than Hoop Dreams.
And that was a pretty good film, by the way.
And it was a pretty good film.
Now, if you're curious about that Best Editing nomination, by the way, the award ended up going to Forrest Gump. The snub of Hoop Dreams resulted in a scathing article by Adel Adelson of Entertainment Weekly in July of 1995, in which he uncovered the cronyism used by the nomination committee for the Academy Awards. He reported that the judges, hearing through word of mouth that Hoop Dreams would inevitably win the award for Best Documentary Feature, deliberately gave it low scores to push it out of the running. The winner that year happened to be Maya Ling, A Strong, Clear Vision, which just happened to be made by the documentary committee's ex-chairwoman. This resulted in major reform in the way documentaries were nominated. After years of ignoring excellent films like Shoah, Roger and Me, and Paris is Burning, it seemed like Hoop Dreams was the last straw, and a wider audience of judges in both Los Angeles and New York would be used to narrow down the nominations. There was also a different point system implemented. As for director Steve James, you may have never heard of him, but you've probably heard of some of his later documentaries. These included 2002's Stevie, about a boy James had once been a Big Brother advocate for, 2011's The Interrupters, about inner-city violence in Chicago, and, perhaps the most famous of all, the excellent tearjerker Life Itself, a 2014 documentary about the life of Roger Ebert, for which James shadowed him in the final months of his life. Ebert must have been proud to be the subject for a filmmaker who made what he probably considered the best documentary ever. What did I think of Hoop Dreams? Well, I hate basketball. Being from Chicago, I was always the killjoy every year the Bulls would approach the playoffs. Now, I suppose that sounds like heresy to some sports fans, but it turns out you don't have to give a lick about basketball to enjoy Hoop Dreams. This is, after all, what makes good documentaries great. Nobody cares, for instance, about the process used to create wire hangers, but it would take a really talented filmmaker to make a great documentary about making wire hangers. Well, okay, fine. I understand that basketball is infinitely more interesting than wire hangers to most people, but hopefully you get my point. The thing is that basketball is merely the frame of this film, which is about the dreams of two talented boys who were dealt a raw hand at birth. And yes, race is an issue here. In one scene, Arthur happily celebrates his 18th birthday, and although it isn't said, it's undoubtedly implied that many boys in his demographic don't live to see their 18th birthdays. The film also begs the question of whether a student's environment can impact his performance. With William at a predominantly white school and Arthur at a predominantly black school, it's interesting to compare and contrast them by the end of their senior year. How exactly they do compare, I will not spoil you, as the answer is the reason I found myself enthralled for almost 3 hours at their stories. And it's not just about Arthur and William. Their families are affected by their failures and successes, particularly Arthur's family, whose lives are not unlike a game of chutes and ladders. I found his mother particularly endearing, and his father is the subject of a number of reveals and twists, which, again, I will not spoil for you. I don't really share Roger Ebert's opinion that Hoop Dreams is the best documentary ever, but it is a damn fine film. In 2013, it was given a handsome restoration that can now be found in the Criterion Collection, which includes a documentary about what happened to the A.G. and Gates families after the film was released. And because I never pull punches when it comes to being critical about these movies, I'll make just one negative comment. The one thing that pulled me out of it was Steve James's droning narration. Maybe they should have gotten Ben Stein instead. Well, that's all I have to say about Hoop Dreams. Tune in next week when I talk about 1972's Cabaret, directed by Bob Fosse. In the meantime, feel free to email me questions or comments at 1001moviespodcast@gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter at 1001moviespc, or subscribe to the podcast's Facebook page. Until next time, happy viewing.